this video, we dive into the movie Sisu Road to Revenge. We will discuss the storyline, summarize the plot, and explore the cast and characters. Additionally, we will cover the movie's production detail and box office performance. Finally, we will provide reviews and share personal reactions. So let's get started. The film opened with a narrator about an award. Finland had to give up some of its territories to Soviet Union, forcing many Finns out of their homes and into Siberian prisoners. A Soviet Red Army commander, Igor, is full of himself. He is about to meet with a KGB officer who knows that Dragov was responsible for the murder of army families, which fled his rig and turned him into an ID killing machine known as Koi. The officer offers Dragov payments for finding Artemi and killing him for good. Artemi began his journey back home with recovered gold in his truck. Dragov and man Artemi quickly killed most Soviet soldiers, including running one guy halfway over and reviving his truck up, so the man files back into Dragov's shield after killing most of the men. Artemi aims his rifle at Dragov but end up leaving him alone, not recognizing who he is at first. Dragov is then met by comrades on motorcycle and continue his pursuits. The bikers catch up to Artemi, with one of them managing to shoot him in the side. Most of the bikers end up crashing, getting blown up, or even beheaded as a massive explosion goes off, forcing Artemi to take cover and set fire through the woods. He also takes time to cool the truck down and tend to his wood while Dragov's order reinforcements to unleash hell. A few fighter jets came to go after him. Artemi gets back behind the wheels and briefly hides in a barn, but it quickly bombed. Artemi managed to take one jet down in the woods by stopping and causing its wing to get clipped, sending the pilot into a fatal crash. Artemi waits until it is safe and quit before continuing. Another fighter pilot approached Artemi from the side of a caliph. He managed to avoid the gunfire, so the pilot attacks himself and let the jet fly toward the Artemi track. Artemi shoot on of the sport of his truck and hit the brakes, sending a few pieces of wood forward to create a ramp and send the jet briefly upward before it crashes. More jets arrives and drop bombs on the area, killing the pilot and forcing Artemi to drive the truck off a cliff and into river. The truck is gone, but Artemi gets himself and the dog out of the water. He makes a raft from the wood and come up on a tank. Artemi gathered a bundle of explosive as he dragged it toward the border where the Dragov and his men are waiting. He picks up speed by spraying fuel into the engine before detonating the explosive, flaming the entire tank over the barrier and over Dragov's head. The tank crashes and breaks apart. Artemi lets the dog go free before being captured, as they want him alive. Dragov takes Artemi prisoners on board a train heading back to Siberia, where he is brutally beaten as it moves forward. Dragovs enter and tell Artemi that he is the man who killed his family. He recounts it before. Only thing Dragov ever remembers was Artemi's older sons. He stood before Dragovs to protect his mother and baby brother. Dragunov brags about how he chopped into pieces and fed him to straw dogs. He then tells Arthmi that he is an abomination and not some great legend. Athmi takes his knife and goes through the heart of a sleeping soldier, taking to move past from jump to jump without awaking anyone from making it past the first guard. The second one is more difficult. He has to throw in a pin one soldier who spot him and then stab another in his bed. He makes it out of the car before the soldier underneath him in the awakened by the dripping blood and failing body. In the lost car, Arthmi ends up stepping on broken glass after one soldier drop his powder. Eventually the soldier wake up and the Arthmi has to start killing them. Dragunov is in the car of KGB commissions and uncouple the train, leaving Arthmi behind, and Arthmi find a gigantic missiles in his car. Dragunov is waiting to collect his payment for getting Arthmi. However, Dragunov turns on the KGB officer and his men, killing them and collecting his money. Arthmi ignites the missile and rides it toward Dragunov's guard, crashing through the window and getting into the barrel with his nemesis. Dragunov puts up a good fight and kicks Arthmi's back toward the missile. He gives Arthmi a chance to step out. He is large, but Arthmi realizes that he has loosened the missile's holding. The missiles come through and moves toward Dragunov's, and Arthmi outruns it as it slaps into Dragunov's skull before exploding dangerously at the Finnish border. Arthmi makes it across with all his recovered gold. He shows his paper to the border guard. He recognizes and salutes him in the process of rebuilding his new home. He gets the gold and the dog back. A group of locals approach him with tools, and Arthmi thinks they are there to fight him as well. However, one of the men says he looked like he could use some help. Arthmi is visible more grateful, and the men proceed to help. Following the end of the war finished, Commander Arthmi returned to his old home on the Swedish sides of the border to recover the gold from his old house so he can rebuild it in new territory. A farmer sees Red Army commander names Agor Dragunov, the man responsible for the murder of Arthmi's wife and the son, is freed from prison by KGB officials who become aware of Arthmi's presence and want to get rid of him. Dragunov begins several men on motorcycles and plan to hunt Arthmi, but a few succeed or survive. Eventually, Nord troops runs Arthmi off the road, but he recovers his gold and attempts to make it across the Swiss border by flipping a tank over it. It is destroyed, and Dragunov has Arthmi captured on board board a train heading back to Siberia. Dragunov reveals who he is after having him tortured, fueled by a renewed desires of revenge. Arthmi frees himself and kills most of the Swiss soldiers before riding a missile face off against Dragunov. After a barrel, Arthmi lets the missile crash and blow up Dragunov's. Sisu Road to Revenge came out on Friday. It is a sequel to the 2022 film Sisu, but it not put a 2 in the title. Some friend of mine says that trailers and were not aware it was a sequel. I think that is wise marketing. This is an old school stand-alone approach to sequels that you would not even need to know beforehand. There is one more thing you should understand to appreciate the story. So yeah, watch the first series if you want to. You have my permission, but if you like either one of them, I recommend watching the other entry in the movie series. It is a pretty straightforward. Atomic Corp is practically finished badass a rugged and scared ex-commando who looks some like a farmer than an action star. That is his superpower. He will never give up or give in, so he goes to hell and back, and then back to hell again, and pretty much he just get dunked repeatedly in the hell until he is totally soaked in it. But he keeps crying his own out again, and anybody who does everything to him along the way dies horribly as he's at his hands. The first movie would be clever and well executed action indie movie in any era, but it happened to come out at a time when it was practically enjoyable to see some faces get messed up. It takes place at the end of World War II when a band of fleeing Nazis try to steal gold nuggets he has just found and get elaborately and joylessly slaughtered for it. In chapter 4 of the film, we learn the backstory that he has a Finnish commander during the Winter War, and when the murder of his family turned him into a mythical one-man death scare known for killing over 300 Swiss soldiers. In Sisu's road to revenge, he gets a surprising opportunity to directly recover his family's home while just trying to accomplish one task that he refuses to give up on. He crosses over the border to his old house in a part of Finland now annexed by the Soviet Union. He uses a crowbar to remove the boards that make up his cabin, taking them apart one by one and peeling them on his truck. I was hoping that they could also take the property line next to the house, even though it would be easier to just load the truck intact, and I got my wish. Then he hit the road thinking it is a just road to Finn, not even to revenge. But the KGB knows about Athme's visit. A KGB official goes to a prison in Siberia to release the infamous war criminal Igor. He is the one who killed Athme's sons and copped up with a shovel. This man is released so he can stop the monster he created, and in return they will give up his freedom. Writer-director Jalmari is openly inspired by the Rambo movies and is currently set to direct Stoneless and oddly evil version of Rambo being released as a wordless campaign. So there it is. He just want to get his house out, and it is largely a chess movie. There is clearly a big George Miller influence, practically the road warrior with Soviet soldier wearing growl buildings, mask like helmets, shuggings on motorcycles with cocktails added, climbing on top. I like that he is not only trying to get away but also trying to protect piece of wood from damage. Even better, when the truck does not survive, he returns the piece of the cabin into a raft before improvising his way to knock part of the truck just in time to make a ramp to launch a plane trying to dive bomb him. There is very fast and furious or transported approach to physics, which is way better than the stupid kind that just sucks. I sense a bit of Smilberg in the way he continuously faces new obstacle and has to improvise. Things go comically wrong, and he always get back up and silently figure out his next move. But he is nothing like Indiana Jones, more like Rambo and John MC Clan in their respective sequels before he can accomplish all of his, but not without going through tremendous trials of physical pain and injury. There are specific references. One upping of Die Hard, where he has to walk barefoot over broken borders and then shove a stick into his back too. This is a good international genre movie that openly finished with its stars and attitude, not compromising anything. Jalmari still uses his same cinematographer, editor, and production designer, and a brave and coordinated woman, Naso, in Finnish. It is always fun to see them being psychotic bastards, and this time they get to go fall on with Russians accents. More importantly, we have seen Lang limit combating violence in John Wick Chapter 1 and 2 and Atomic Blondes 1 and 2. So there would not really be a move fitting opponent for his specific hero. I do not think one exists, but if there is next time, makes him defeat a ridiculously fit and young guy, just in case there might be some people on the older side who would appreciate a confidence boost. Who knows? I doubt it, but it is possible. Sisu Road to Revenge combines so many of my favorite kind of movies elements: themes, minimal presence, and lack of dialogue. The musical by Jury Sapa and way he pick off enemies in the eventually graphics movies feel almost like a slasher films. The intelligently simply constructions of the story is like a really good action movie or western, and the imaginatively ridiculous uses of various weapons and vehicles feel like a different type of really good action movie. Some movies with these qualities can be little too sugary. I enjoy watching them and appreciate the fun tone, but forget them quickly. That may not be case with this one. For the simple fact that Hellnembers found a way to end on a genuinely emotional note that add weight to the whole things. I will discuss specific in a spoiler post below. He said in an interview that he loves where this end up and it would make a good ending to the story, but that he also has an idea for a third one that he might want to make. I like both options. I am gratefully that he fulfilled my wish from the reviews, which was simply for him to make his next move in a responsible amount of time. He seems to be on a roll now, and you would not want to get in way. I was so surprised that this of all movies was able to genuinely move me at the end. He has made it home. He is putting the house back together. Suddenly a group of men carrying axes and hammers approach. I think you probably guessed where they was going like I did, and both the scores and framings set it up for a fight. So he grabbed his axe, and then one of them saying, "We thought you would use some help." These are not weapons they bought. They are tools, of course, but the way Athme cocks up and the man tell him he does not need to say anything, man, that tugs by heart stings like a motorized reel. He thanks them, even the legend and the immortal, the finished Baba Yaga. The guy who simply cannot because he refuses to turn outward his feeling underneath had to do it all entirely by himself. The idea that that somebody would actually do something nice for him, that he could have some help just over him. They know that he could use it and that he could never articulate it. In the photo during the end credits, we even see him smiling while they are building. He made friends, he enjoyed a joke, maybe he even told one, I have that for him. And again, this is a good Rambo parallel because it is a little like the structure that make First Blood such as classics. Rambo goes through all of that, the finally breaks and pouring everything out, and we find out what has been going through his mind. And the whole time Arthmi could never do that, but he is just as broken and emotionally repressed as Rambo, and it is just as powerful when it comes out. It is movie about funny ways to kill tribal people, but it is also so much more. The best part about Sisu was its nonsense approach. A thrilling action movies that did not indulge in unnecessary subplot resulting in adrenaline inducing glory returned with a sequel that maintained the same approach. This time the protagonist Artemi Karpi takes on the Red Army and has killed around 300 Soviet soldiers in the Winter War single-handedly to seek revenge for his family, becoming a legend 2 years after his gold discovery. Athmi embarked on a journey to his family house in Lapland. He once lived there with his wife and two sons before they were brutally murdered by a Soviet soldier in 1944. After surviving, he decides to travel home, intently that the house will be dismantled and rebuilt somewhere safe. But soon after Athmi crossed the border and head toward Finland, his path is blocked by a Soviet army unit. He realized it will cause trouble the moment he noticed the Molotov's cocktail in the hand of one of the soldiers. He knows he has to act immediately. Athmi collectively managed to take down all the soldiers, but he spares Agor because he does not wish to harm someone who did not actively trying to shoot him. Athmi has no idea that the man he spared was the one who had recklessly killed his family. Agor, however, has a fair idea of the man he is dealing with. He realizes that taking down Athmi will not be easy task, but he is ready for the challenge. He instructs soldiers on motorcycles and even pilots to do hunt Athmi down. Athmi is attacked from the air just as he finished killing the motorcyclist. He has to find a final solution to protect himself from the airplane. The shots are fired and he end up taking shelter in a barn. He figure there is no way he can protect himself there, so he get back on the road navigating while the airplane continuously targeting him is not easy, and he end up driving his truck into a lake. It almost drowns him, but he realizes his dog and uses the wood as a makeshift floating device on the water. As he sails along, he stumbles upon a embedded tank. Arthmi loads the gold onto the tank and drives it toward the Soviet camp, but unfortunately his plan does not pan out as intended. The tank is destroyed by the impact and Athmi is left badly injured. With no other choice, he surrenders. surrender. After stepping out of the tank, he is assembled in the leg with a sharp knife. He accept expected. He is tortured repeatedly. He is hung from the ceilings of train wagons like flesh, meat, and hot iron is repeatedly pressed against him. He bleeding from all over when Igor realized that Athami has an extreme tolerance for physical torture, but the one thing that truly destroyed him was the murder of his family. So Igor Delbertry described in detail how brutally he killed Athami's wife and son. He adds that his elder son Athami's Gr. Jr. Athami Jr. was fierce and brave. Remembering him as the little boy who suddenly tried to attack him in the eye, the child tried to protect up or fight to protect his mother and younger sibling until his dying breath. Igor looked Athami in the eyes and promised to put a fight to protect his mother and younger sibling until his dying breath. Igor looked Athami in the eyes and promised to put on the fire in him. He believed Athami is a physiological phenomenon and views to end the legends around him, turning him into a broken piece of flesh with no memory and using the logs of his house for real toys. Igor knew that everything he said would be enough to fuel Athami's defense. As soon as Igor leaves, Athami gathers all his strength and fury to free himself from the iron's restraints, and he succeeds. The soldier at the stations outside the wagon where Athami is looked up and terrified when they see through small window that Athami has freed himself. One of them decided to step into his path, and you can already guess what happened to the soldier. Athami was unstoppable. The soldier who charged at Athami assumes that he did not have any weapon, but he had no idea that he was dealing with Athami. Pulled the knife, blood pouring from the flesh, and held his wound were walking onward. He tried to move silently because he did not want to create chaos before he reached his target. Athami tried his best to stay quiet, but a couple of soldiers stepped out to relieve themselves, and Athami had no choice but to kill them. Undoubtedly, he could have killed every soldier on the train with ease, but he was an honorable man and did not want to spill blood unnecessary in the sequel. There were a few moments of raw humor, such as when Athami was walking on top of the train and suddenly a metal pipe flew in his direction and ended up falling into one of the wagons full of sweat soldiers. They tried to shout him down, but it was like trying him to hit an invisible man flying by, and with his range there was no way anyone could stop him. Athami grabbed hold of the machine guns and fired repeatedly until the weapon went completely silent. Igor was in the wagon next to one Athami was in. He heard the gunshot and immediately realized it had to be him. He figured the legends around Athami was indeed true, and the only way to escape his fate was to uncouple the wagon. Igor began to flee, and while he was frustrated at first, he saw noticed a bicycle right inside the train. He immediately decided to use it as quickly booster to catch up with Igor. Igor knew there was no way to could stop Athami, but he also had his eyes on the money he was promised by his KGB's holders. So immediately after disconnecting the coupling, he confronted the KGB agents he was dealing with. His elder offered him the money he was promised, hoping that could be enough to let him go free. But Igor killed him without hesitation. Just when Igor thought he had made the best of the situation, Athami came flew in. Athame used his bare hands to repeatedly pummel him, but Igor was still wanted alive and not yet in his worst physical condition. Igor overpowered him and struck him repeatedly. During Sisu road to revenge ending, Igor grabbed hold of a shovel and used it against Athame. He did so internationally as he had used it to kill Athme's family as well. Meanwhile, the missile was still sacred to the base after it had already been ignited. Igor did not realize that Athme had a plan, assuming he was just a man who refused to die in the end. When Iger asked Athame if he had any last words, Athame spat blood from his mouth. Agar finally reconnected the door, and by the time he realized that Athame has released the missile, it was already too late to escape. Iger attempted to run, and for a second the missile stopped right in front of his face. He briefly thought that maybe it was not his day to die yet, but he was proven wrong. The missile ultimately consumed Iger and exploded violently, creating a massive blast in the surrounding area. Athame finally returned home to Finland. He was in a bloody state, but he still managed to carry the logs to safety. When he handed his passport to the border soldiers, they saluted him as soon as they read his name. Athame was a national hero, and he had finally returned to a place where he could spend the rest of his life in the peace. Sisu. By the ending, he learned that Athame has started his dream project of rebuilding his house. He does not have his family by his side, but at last the house signifies that he is finally in a safe place where his soul can rest in peace. Also, for everything he has been through, Athme's faithful dog managed to survive and continued to be his brave man's only true companion. Athame is busy building the house when a group of men approaches him. He instinctively assumes that they have come to cause his harm, but when one of men says they want to help him build his house, he is deeply moved. He has spent such a brutal and miserable existence that simple kindness and genuine respect surprise him. Perhaps in that moment, Athame feels relieved knowing that there is still some good left in the world, especially since he no longer has his own son around to help him build the house. The men from the community show up and support him while he has always preferred living by himself. The final scenes suggest that sometimes even a legendary man like Athame Korpi would appreciate the help and support of his community. 2 years after the gold discovery, Athame embarks on a journey to the family house in Kerala. He once lived there with his wife and two sons before they were brutally murdered by a Soviet soldier in 1944. Athme's family was brutally killed by Igor Dragunov. Their bodies were dismembered with shovels and later fed to homeless stray dogs. Igor was held in prison in Siberia and was released under the condition that he would deal with Athame and protect the reputation of Soviet army. Athame knows he has to act immediately. He clearly managed to take down all the soldiers, but he spared Igor because he does not wish to harm someone who did not actively trying to shoot him. Athame has no idea that the man he spared is the one who wrathfully killed his family. Igor, however, has a fair idea of the man he is dealing with. He realized that taking down Athme will not be easy task, but he is ready for the challenge. Igor instructs soldiers on motorcycles and even pilot to hunt Athmes down. He is attacked from all sides, and just he as he finished killing the motorcyclist, he has to find a solution to protect himself from airplane. He is forced to take shelter in a barn, realizing there is no way he can protect himself there. So he gets back on the road again. As he is traveling, he stumbles upon an abandoned tank. Athme loads the log into the tank and uses improvised explosives and landmines to force his way into a Suez camp. But unfortunately, his plan does not work as intended. The tank is destroyed by the impact and Athme is left badly injured. He has no choice left but to surrender. But before stepping off the tanks, he pushed a sharp knife blade into his leg. As expected, he is tortured repeatedly. He is hung from the ceilings of a train wagon like fresh meat, and a hot iron is repeatedly pressed against him. He is bleeding all over when Igor stepped in. Igor realized that Athme has an extreme tolerance for physical torture, but the one thing that completely destroyed him was the murder of his family. So Igor internationally spells out exactly how brutally he killed Athme's wives and sons. He added the Athme elder son was fierce and brave, remembering him as a little boy who suddenly tried to attack Igor in the eye out of nowhere. He tried to put a fight to protect his mother and young siblings. In 2022, the Finn anti-action movie film had Luke, one of the hit wonder, trapping into a greaser prospector giant platform of necessity. Director Jalmari Helander had clearly learned from George Miller Mad Max for Road principally the idea that there is serious value in going straight to the matter along a single state native lines. The profitable sleeper hit now get a follow-up, which however feel more expensive while still looking in under 90 million. Having seen his Sisu world road to revenge makes it indomitable hero. Athme gain a tragic backstory. Various post-wars setting where named Red Army agonists replace unnecessary obstacle, balance outs, and good timing at the movie. One scene shows Athme dismantling his family home bean by bean, and another shows Dragov being spun from jail before appearing on the back road of Soviet-occupied Finland. Helander has the voice of a kid playing war game in the wood. You half expect someone mom to call everybody in at 4. It may be cartoonish, sharp, or regrettably misplaced, but the comic-like simplicity serves as a rebuke to bloated blockbusters. You do not need excessive CGI or practical special effects to be compelling. As blooded face reflects grief, the film meanwhile offers one grace not after another. These become a memento of life rather than a new beginning, like it its hero. The film holds on to the essential core card, the rest, and goes harder and faster for it. The film showed strong results overseas and elsewhere. Sisu Road to Revenge is out on 20 November in Australia and 21 November in the UK and USA. This art was amended on 21st November 2025. An earlier version suggested the movie was filmed in Finland. However, it was shot in Estonia. Sisu Road to Revenge is brutal action movie that purposefully goes for lean and mean execution, but that does not mean there is not a deeper story running beneath the surface. The sequel to 2022 Sisu brings back the Finnish enemy known to the public as the Immortal for his exceptional battlefield feat. The film focuses on his efforts to bring the house he shared with his family back into the Finnish territory, which catches the attentions of the Soviet Union regime. What follows is an action movie that unfolds from darkly heroes to jaw-droppingly beautiful, all while exploring a story about trauma and loss. This Road to Revenge is a wild execution of the first film, pitting Corpi against Russia equivalent, and slowly revealed just how personal their feud is. Dragov is quickly established as a former agent of a Soviet Union whose past actions crossed a final line and led to the death of innocents, including Corpi family. Reasoning that Dragov is only person alive who can contend with the Immortal, the Soviet leadership frees him from prisons and set him before Scorpio. Much of the film follows Scorpio attempts to reach the Finnish border with the remains of his family home, while Sisu benefits from a tense game of cats and mouse between the corps and the Nazi soldiers who encounters him. Sisu is far more rooted in a personal conflict. He is now found in direct contrast to Corp, with both men having similar kill sets and disgraded for their enemies. Both men seems to share similar perspectives on killing in the moment, but deals with memory of destruction very difficultly. Dragged back to a copycat dreams of his victims planned together. Dragov is portrayed as an almost cartoonishly black and white villain. However, this is somewhat similar to Corp, who is guarded towards his enemy. Dragov takes pride in his work and seeks to break the Immortal for the thrills of it. Corp is shown to be hunted by his past in the film final moments. Even people coming to help him or his horse initially come across a threat. Corp is visible shaken when he does not have to fight a man and is almost hurt when someone tries to help. This is clear display of the learning humanity that gives Corp the memory of his family. Some things hinted at slightly in the first act, but becoming more pronounced in the final moments of the Road to Revenge. Sisu Road to Revenge is a fairly self-contained story, concluding with Corby envisioning his family by killing Dragovs before completing his journey home. The film ends with Corby constructing his family home in the Finland with the help of locals. In short, Athmi could be drawn into further conflict with the Soviet, especially if his action in the territory were considered an act of aggression by the army. The Finnish government could decorate Athmi for his adventure, or even an innocent civilian could call upon him for help. As he's writing, the future of Athmi is up in the air. Both the film writer, director, Helander and star GMA has expressed interest in a potential sequel, but there is no concrete plan for a follow-up. The ending of Sisu Road to Revenge reflects this. The final shot of the film, framed like a photograph of Athami and his new Finnish neighbor building the house, could be seen as his inductions into the local community. This would give Athami plenty of reasons to defend it and his people, setting up an easy narrative path for a third film. Conversely, the image could be taken as a final epilogue for the character, proving that he was able to put down his weapon and rebuild the family home, given his endurance after the loss of his family and the pain of the battle. Sisu Road to Revenge is a fairly straightforward story about a man trying to move a building from Russia to Finland and many challenges he faces along the way. However, it was very much a movie concerned with unattended legacy and lingering trauma. Jorma is a killing machine, but he is also haunted by memories of the family he lost and struggles after constantly having to fight for his life. Dragunov and the Sweat War effort attempts to break the illusions of immortal, hoping to return his unexpected legendary status into something they can control by breaking him. Athami fury over his family fate drives him to truly ridiculous feats, but it has also left him a quiet shell of a man who barely says a word. Even his new neighbors recognize this, acknowledging that he cannot speak about his trauma even as they recognize it and want to help. Sisu Road to Revenge is a ridiculous action movie. However, it is also a movie about a man who has to keep moving, as slowing down would force him to confront the loss of his old family. It is a movie about the extreme lengths someone will go to for both ignorance and peace, and it gives Sisu Road to Revenge a surprisingly emotional core. One of the most brutal Nazi killing franchises of the past few years is back with Sisu Road to Revenge, changing up in the story structure this time around. Once again written and directed by Jalmari Helander, the action sequel pick up 2 years after its acclaimed predecessors, with Jorma and G.I. returning to his homes. As Sherman is hunted by the brutal killing Dragov, playing by the Stephen Lang, is looking to start a family and build a new life. Now that the war is ending at home, he is mentally burned, loading our trucks to drive across Finland to find a peaceful new home and honor his family memories. However, in an effort to kill the legends of a man who refuses to die, releases Dragunovs and give him nearly endless resources to hunt. This sets up the protagonists for an explosive race across the country. The film originally premiered at Fantastic Fest in September 2025. Sisu Road to Revenge has already granted critical acclaim, currently holding a 96% approval rating from critics on Rotten Tomatoes, who have praised the sequels for its inventive action and dark sense of humor. The movie has also gotten off to a strong start at the box office, grossing nearly $2 million during its Finnish premiere, and against its $12 million production budget, while also tracking for $3 million debate in its domestic opening weekend. Ahead of the film USA release, Sim Grand Herman interviewed Jorma Helander and Stephen Lang to discuss Sisu Road to Revenge, examining the difference between two films. Helander explained that the first movie was structured like a caper journey, with the idea of transporting a home through hostile territory. hostile trajectory, creating tension at every moment, similar to the road movie with constant action. It is entertaining to watch, but slow to shoot, especially with numerous moving vehicles, cars, and motorbikes, as all the camera also in motions. This makes filming very time-consuming and technically challenging. With a bigger budget for the sequels, Helander was able to scale up the action. The director highlighted the big explosions as one of the most exciting set piece to assemble, and the vehicle stunts as the most complex moment. According to the Helander, pulling these off required meticulously planning, as they had only one chance to get everything right on set. Another key allusion is Sisu Road to Revenge is that unlike many other action franchises, the sequels gives more insights into Tommy backstory, practically regarding his family and the personal motivations behind his action. Helander explained that his change came from his desire to reclaim the house and make the story feel original and emotionally resonant. From the first second, he intended to craft a narrative that matched the first film but added a strong personal and emotional core alongside the high impact action sequences. The second film was recently finished, and again you bought John Scopes on board here with Stephen Lang and Short Break, two fantastic actors as your primary villain. How did your more international casting come about, and what drew you to see those two in practical? I was thinking about someone younger, but when the idea came to cast Stephen Lang, I immediately thought it was a great choice. When I had my first conversations with him, it just felt right. It was awesome to get someone like Lang for Sisu, because Atomy really needed a badass actor for this film. Stephen obviously is no stranger to playing villain, but every actor has a different way of getting into their villain role, whether it's a physical theme, their backstory, or their voice. What did you find was the best way to get into Igor's that in the film? As I recall, it had a lot to do with kind of separating myself out. I was really looking to create a kind of void within myself, and one of the way I achieved that was delving into his backstory. Obviously, the backstory of a god like Dragunov is not directly relevant to the narrative, but it is relevant to my approach in planning. Once you realize that Igor was essentially shaped from the moment of his birth, a child of the state, raised by the state, that journey makes the character much more light and reserved. Once we get to the later point in the film, Igor becomes more involved in the action, especially when we finally get to see him and Archme face off. I would love to hear about when you and your co-stars actually shared a green jump and both mentally and physically went through the action together. It was a player because he's a terrific professional. I think we both, even without saying it, and had an unspoken contract to look out for each other. If you think about it, you are on train and in close space where everything is broken and sharp, and wherever you go there are dozens of ways to injure yourself. That created a sense of cautiousness, which I think was good. But working with him, he collaborated really well. He's a fine dude. Whenever he went at it together, a lot of punches were thrown, a lot of stunts were executed, and both of us walked away feeling like we had gone our job and we did not break our hand, ours or partners. I also loved his own stunts. I wanted to touch on Igor because I was genuinely surprised by the sheer brutality of the scenes, combining him being implanted and then blown up. A legendary sequence. If you give more context I always thought he would die with the missile because that was original idea with the train. I thought it would be so cool to ride on moving train with a rocket. So when he had a near that scene seeing it executed by Stephen Lang in Sisu wrote Revenge with such an explosive ending with incredible director Jalmari Helander explained that Igor, a Swiss officer who killed Arthmi Gorby family services as the sequel's central antagonists in a memorable sequence. Igor is blown up by a blasting missile on the train that Arthmi activities. In an interview, Hollander stated that the missile sequence was the first idea for the train central scene, making it inevitable that Igor would meet his end in that manner. Speaking of Igor's death, I was gleefully surprised by the sheer brutality of the scenes, combining the warhead implanted with his explosions. How much planning did you put into craft the script? I always knew he would die with the missile because that was first idea with the train. I thought it would be incredible to ride on a moving train with a rocket in a big missile. So when I heard about it, I knew the missiles would be this, and the train sequence was the biggest set piece in Sisu Road to Revenge, ending with Tommy originally using the missiles as boosters to catch up to Lang's characters in a high-stakes fight between antagonists and protagonists. Luckily, the missile was still armed, killing Dragovs and allowing Arthmi to return to Finland. Reviews for Sisu Road to Revenge has emphasized the major amount of violence in the sequel. This includes a number of creative death scenes for numerous characters, mostly iconized as Arthmi attempting to defeat the antagonist. However, the missile sequence delivers the most furious payoff, benefiting a high octane climax. Road to Revenge hold a 96% rating or Rotten Tomatoes from critics, with many praising the film's action sequences, which make it stand out among other entries in the genre. The missile train sequence is in particular was an international and memorable idea for the climax. The grand action film won't be the only villain role for Lang-like years, given how memorable Igor is a major villain. The clear dream behind the movie, a satisfying payoff in the sequence, make it stand out in the market while delivering a fitting conclusion for the second chapter of Athmi's story, a sleeper hit in 2022. Jalmari Helander Sisu was cartoonishly dark and dirty rush for action fans, reminiscent of Max era film decades earlier. Comparisons to the originals make Road to Revenge feel even more ambitious, with German portraying a likable protagonists battling unstoppable villains at high speed on various forms of transport, while the larger scale sequel almost inevitably lack some of the freshness that make the original kick. The director undeniable flair for gleeful mime and precise pacing will satisfy fans of it. Producers it comparatively lean mean progressions feel practically welcome after so many modern rides that drag out actions for length and expense. Last time around, Arthmi Gorby was a common scenes army commander only wanted to be left alone while scavenging gold in lab. He awakened the grades of depicting Nazis forces, unaware that he was interfering with the one man who had already claimed outlast Russians, like after Soviet forces killed his family during the brief but brutal conflict. This time the terrifyingly fit 16-year-old protagonists encountered in 1946. The global conflict is officially over and he is driving a huge truck to his old home, which thanks to Radnor Bodnar now lies in Russian territory. He intends to dismantle it and resemble it with the remains of Finland, but Sweden's authorities have not forgotten that his legend snuffed out more than 300 troops. Red Army officer Igor Ravi is released from a Siberian prison where he has held for committing innumerable needless murder by a carefully timed plan to ensure Tommy never reached finished soil again. The two adversaries are uniquely matched. Gorby knows the utter brutality that murdered his wife and son, while Dragunov would not feel he has truly completed his mission until the father is dead as well. This step up take about 10 minutes, after which it becomes one dynamic sequence after another. Athami managed to escape in an essential roadblock at home, then survives an attack by a motorcyclist followed by a fighter plane equipped with a machine gun. After a brief aquatic interlude, there is a portrait climax aboard a train speeding back to Siberia, carrying heavily armed Soviet soldiers, pulse blooded prisoners. Needless to say, the odds are stacked against him. The action is divided into 6 title chapters, each mostly focusing on tagging, stunt work, and CJ. Occasionally, the violence comes so thickly that we have not quite sure what just happened. Within this suspenseful sequence, a few near-death escapes stands out, notably one where Athami perform mid-air acrobatics, truly entertaining as it is. Such craziness it is not always completed by a thread of black comedy, which was not emphasized as much in the first film. You could also argue that there is occasionally too much dwelling on Athami's reliance. He frequently extracts bullets and other objects from his flesh, spending near the last half hour bloodied and in boxer shorts, yet none of it seemed to bother him in the slightest, and film retain a degree of dark humor. Even some warmth emerges despite Athami never speaking a word. Lang's explosively delivered dialogue comprises most of the verbal content. If Dragov is not the most distinctive villain's role Lang has ever played, he is at last highly memorable, practically in his explosive exit. Breaks in the actions are brief, while the supporting cast provide little more than cameo experiences and photos. The performer playing the protagonist, Jerry Bull, disappears from long stretches on among several mirror plot holes in Road to Revenge. The film relies on action rather than intriguing traditional storytelling, from Maozama widescreen cinematography to the physical design contributions. The tightly tagged action sequences and Jordi Sapa and Thomas original score, which gain flavor via passages of Finnish singing and spectre reactions. Finnish writer director Jalmari Helander, Sisu 2022 is a World War two actioner in the veins of John Wick, balanced narrative sharpness with generally blood-soaked action. It's the kind of movie where the main character survives every underwater assault, defeats Nazis with improvised weapon, and navigates impossible odds. Sisu cartoonish violence animated by some cheaper looking visual effects lends the film a slightly cult status. By the halfway point, the sheer volume of memes would feels overwhelming, yet scaling things back would be wrong. Helander managed to boil his formula down to the essential, allowing the world building to operate efficiently while maintaining technical proficiency. Road to Revenge is a follow-up that is relentlessly insufficient, so much so that it is scarcely budget to give up the lead character a proper name. The film picks up 2 years after the original, with Athami, the so-called one-man death seekers, on a road back to his homeland, now occupied by the Soviet Union, with his trusty terror in the passenger seats. Athami drives his flatbed across the desolate Finnish countrysides before crossing the border into the enemy territory. There are fewer men on the sides of the road these days, but plenty of dangers remains as Red Army fortifications dominates the landscapes. His mission is to dismantle his family cottage log by log, load the lumber into the truck, and find a quiet place to rebuild. His presence and the border alert a force led man named KGB, an officer currently stationed at a Siberian prison. Most, if not all, of the window dressing from the first movie, any female characters or side plots are left behind, and Athami's infamy as a one-man Soviet killing machine dominates the narrative. Legends has it that he has already killed hundreds of Soviets, and even though the war is over, some seek retributions. It is an Athami who travel the road to revenge alone, but also the nameless officers, and to take him out, Igor Dragunov, the man who killed Athami's family, is a formidable adversary. Road to Revenge make murder seems a little more consequential than in other films, breaking the story into 5 chapters, each accelerating Athami's struggles carefully. It not long after he load his vehicle with his dismantled cottage that Dragunov catches up to him. Athami's home is fiercely guarded by Soviet troops on both land and air. Even as he moves from one set piece to another, each is defined by a different vehicle and multiple ways to die within it. It is Helander grasp of the fundamentals that makes Road to Revenge such a bloody thrilling ride. Echoes of George Miller's as are apparent in Helander over the top maroon laughter and narrative absurdity. They are also present in the clarity of Ma Ozama's cinematography, which captures instant smiling inspired moment of natural grace. There is a coherence and gravity to Road to Revenge carnage which make the action both painful and satisfying. Helander compositions often recall the grammars of silent film thanks to the actors' non-verbal performance and editing that's crackle with precision. The set pieces are executed so well that the audience eagerly anticipate their payoff. Later sequence abroad, a Soviet trains take full advantage of sleeping soldiers who inadvertently becomes part of women's security system as Athami's advises through the compartments. Athami bugs Bunny inspired violence in rarely unearned, making it even more satisfying than it predeceased, which was better suited for short burst of speech spectacles that sustained action. Road to Revenge heightened each moment to moment thrill rather than relying solely on new landscapes, weapons, or tanks outfitted with explosive. It is more refined or enjoyable version of its predecessors, showing what can be done with a clear idea and a focused action. Movies that also respected moment of loss. The sequel nearly overdosed it at a time as Highlander thirst for blood threatened to overwhelm P gradually rise and reset, maintaining tension throughout. It is profound and enlightening, but for 89 minutes, it is a furious road movie, confidently flipping tank and unleashing hell along the way. There is a both coherence and gravity to Roy's carnage, which make the action more painful and satisfying to behold. However, composition takes on grammars of silent thanks to Tommila's precise non-verbal performance and violent editing, which has crispness of what and stand up clicking with the steps that the audience can't wait to see pay off in Sisu Road to Revenge. Jalmari Helander violent 2023 sequel. Sony had to push Scorpio further on body road trips, carefully cultivating Athme as a character, almost like a child in the kingdom learning to share his toy. His productions companies take 6 intense sequences, proving that you do not need excessive blood when you have a man who refuses to die as your hero. I am being fastidious of course, but not as much as you might think. The first time we met, I was told Athme had chosen to live his solitary life. He was content walking by his sides and at peace in his solitude. Of course, life has a way of complicating things. There are always people who cannot mind their own business. In this story, those people happened to be Nazis. Too bad for them. Athme perceived as alone seems an easy target, but little did they know whom they were up against. If you have seen what transpires, you know it did not end well, and if you thought that would be the end of it, you are not alone in thinking so. Here we are in 2025 and Athme himself has returned, bringing some much needed brutality and precision. He is relentless but calculated, genuinely formidable German if crossed, and who dares ruin his day this time. The Soviet Unions of course, led by Red Army commander in this story, discover a man widely considered responsible for creating what would ultimately shape the life of a man who refuses to die by murdering his entire family during the war. There is an insustainable fire within the army that will likely never burnt out. Released from prison, Dragunov vowed to finish the job. He is the culprit behind Athme's greatest agony. All Athme wants, however, is to dismantle the home he once lived in, rebuild it elsewhere, and live the rest of his life in the peace. The Russians have a plan and they will regret it. Our enjoyment comes as we watch Athme navigates this chaos, learning quickly that while some things may change, the man who does not speak has not grown any less formidable or less cold-blooded. After the initial reunion, Dragunov unleashes a unit of armed motorcycle soldiers, realizing that a truck can become a weapon if used creatively. Then comes an attack from the air, and for a time they gain the upper hand. But Athmi is never out. He vengeance contacts like a thread through the veins of extreme prejudice. Road to Revenge cries influence throughout its DNA. Spaghetti westerns, the sequels of John Hobo's Journey, spiritual successor to Mad Max Fury Road, and the perhaps most obviously John Wick. The film draws on these inspiration to build a story that is a simple in premise but never lacking in intensely or pacing. This is pure fan service, and while that is often seen in a negative light, it is not a masterpiece. It does exactly what it promises. The original and its sequels are made for a world thirsty for actions. For one, I am glad that the 2022 Sisu action journey has found its sequel. This sequel may features a stoic, silent action hero, a charming corpse-like figure who dispatches multiple foes in way appropriate to a bigger budget, but instead of facing Nazis this time he is up against multiple clones from Soviet Russians. A brief prologue explained how Finland was absorbed into the Soviet Union after World War II. Unfortunately for Kirby, part of the land where his family once lived was lost. A brief prologue explains how Finland had to seal land to Sweden after World War II. Tragically, part of the Kirby family home was in that area. His family was murdered by Goodridge, a Red Army officer who wielded shovels and carved them into pieces. Athmi sets out to recover lumber from his old home so he can rebuild a new house within Finland's new borders. A relentless Dragov is instructed to hunt him down. Set piece after set piece of hugely entertaining, ultra-violent mime insurance with Corboy determined to get to the border with his timber through hell or high water, not to mention bullets, bombs, missiles, trucks, trains, and planes, and a plethora of human cannon founder. Fans will understand that none of this violence is meant to be taken seriously in real life. There is absolutely no way Athmi could survive the intense level of brutally depicted in practically nasty sequence. Athmi gives an as good as he gets, living up to the film title. As before, the movie reminds us that Korba is an unstoppable force, showing resilience and ingenuity in the face of overwhelming odds. Some moments that had me laughing like a 12 years old sinking into an age-resisted film. Speaking of which, I was astonished this got past the British Board of Films classifications as a 15 rather than an 18 over through an action sequence or every bit thrilling. They are expertly choreographed. Common into 2025, Sisu Road to Revenge was one of the most anticipated films of the year. I loved the first Sisu, and judging by the trailers, I looked like the sequels would be just as good, if not better. I promised to retain everything that made the original movie, such as Blast, while also upping the stake, and that was music to my ear. I could not bear to miss another bloody adventure with my favorite Finnish action hero. So when ticket went on sales, I booked a seat for opening day. Sisu Road to Revenge was written and directed by Jerry Helander, starring Stephen Lang as Cowboy, the Finnish soldier who killed hundreds of Russians combatants during World War II. He has returned to Swedish territory to reclaim the home he once knew. The land used to belong to Finland, but after the war, it was given to Russia. Of course, the army does not want to return. Cowboy dismantles the house, loads the logs onto his trucks, and drives back to his homeland. But along the way, he runs into Russia, who wants him dead, and the only way to stop them is to kill them first. Right off the bat, I want to let you know that you do not need to see the original Sisu Road to Revenge. This is a standalone sequel in the veins of Indiana Jones and the Temples of Domes and Glass Onions, an easy to follow mystery that equally assembled to newcomers and Sisu fans alike. You just need to be a fans of great actions. If you fit that bill, I think you are going to love this movie. Once Road to Revenge getting going, it keep up the pace until the credits roll. Sure, it takes a short breather's nose and then, but you will never have to wait long for the actions to pick up again. At first, the film is very reminiscent of the best road-based action movies like Mad Max, Fury Road, Petri. Much the entire first half in Atomy is trying to drive back to Finland. So whenever the Russians goes on the attack, you cannot help but think of Max or Furious driving a big rig down the deserts highways. Don't get me wrong, Road to Revenge does not quite reach the depth of defying height of those stones cold classics, but it is still pretty damn good, seeming a charming hero movie fast and creatively takes down his stakers in a fury of blood in both beautiful and bloody. When the movie shifts a gear around the midway points, it does not lose a single steps in practical. The second half really highlights the concepts that gives the franchises its name. Sisu is a finished world that refer to unbreakable grit and intensely even in the face of seeming impossible obstacle, and Ashmi is pretty much then living embodiment of that. I am not going to spoil anything, but if you thought Rambo stitching himself up in the First Blood was impressive, just wait until you see what Athme does here. He exhibits an almost superhero realism, and Stephen Lang brutally brings that unflinching determination to life through body. So guys, if you want these types of reviews, then subscribe to my channels, and also bell icon, press the bell icon for notifications, and always remain tuned from my reviews. This is the review of Sisu Road to Revenge, a movie that is very fantastic, full of actions and many more things. This is like a silent movie. There is single dialogues, no more discussion, no more theory. It's just full of actions. Road to Revenge, as Athme came back to his older house and collect all his house logs and put these logs and loaded onto a truck and start his journey where Dragunov stopped by placing a jeep in front of his truck, and a soldier came to earth me and checked him and tried to put flare a bottle flare on his truck, but he stopped and kill him and take his gun where in Dragunov car a man tries to kill to snipe Artemi, but Dragunov stopped, don't move, but he moved and killed by the Artemi, where Dragovs remain still and do not show any movement. So Artemi left him because he does not kill any innocent man or any person who does not want to halt him. So he left Dragunov and continue his journey. Then Dragov called a new troop for to stop Artemi, and a motorbiker actions is here, and we see an actions of motorbiker stunts, motorbiker troops behind his trucks. They ride bikes near Artemi trucks and try to throw bombs to shoot him, but army managed and escape from these bikers. This is full of action. After this, when Artemi was on his road, two planes chase him and try to bombard on the truck, but Artemi placed his truck in a cabin, wooden cabin. It's like a wooden cabin, like store. He put his truck in store, but pilot start firing on this. So Artemi leave from here, drive his truck out from the store, and chasing plan behind this truck cast in forest in woods. Artemi was fully succeed in crashing this plane, and other plane was crashed by two logs of Artemi's trucks, and plane crashed and fell down. Pilot tries to come out from the plane. He succeed, but after this. His truck fell into a valley into water. Artemi survived there. He loaded his all logs on a tank and drove tank to the border, but Dragunov was waiting for him. When Artemi see that Dragunov has set a boundary for him, he increased the speed. He accelerated the speed of tank, and in the back of the train he placed bomb. When he came near the border, he aired in the air tanks, so a bomb was blast, and the tank flew up and crossed the border. Here the Artemi was badly injured, so Dragunov caught him and put on a train hanging in a cabin in a wagon, and the captain and the soldiers was very happy from Dragunov. They promised to release him, but Dragunov was not wishing. They killed the all soldiers, where Artemis free himself from the soldiers, killing them. A soldier was very scared. He is not going in, but his companions go in, and Artemi first kill him and then comes from door. and then he comes into a next cabin killing other sleeping soldiers. First of all, he is not trying to kill these all, but when one of them awakens and try to kill Athme, he silently killed different soldiers, many soldiers. After this, they came into the cabin where Dragunov, but Dragunov unchained their trains. Then Artemis have got an idea to run his cabin by flaming flaming a rocket approaches to Dragunov's cabins intensely. So this is the most actionful scene where the train cabins is run by a rocket. It's very surprising how it's possible, but it's all action movies are created like this. So Arthmi succeed in killing Dragunovs, and then in blood, full of blood body, he reached his border and show all his document to the soldier. When soldiers saw this is Arthmi, who is like a hero for them, so they saluted him, and Arthmi reached he finally a safe place and start to build a safe house for him for his entire life. His neighbor approached there and tried to help Arthmi, but Arthmi thinks they are like enemies, but neighbors say they came here for their help. So Artemis was so emotional. He tried to say something, but a man stopped that he does not need to say anything, so he silence and complete their house. This is the movie, so subscribe to my channel and press the bell icon. Thanks you guys.